Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard, episode 165. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an AmLaw 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back. I am your host, Heather Hubbard, and we have a really important topic this week. Really important. So I want to jump straight in. I am fired up about this topic, and every woman in a law firm or corporate America needs to hear this episode. So I want you to listen, and then I want you to share it with absolutely all of your female friends and colleagues. This is so super important. Okay, here's what's been going on. And by the way, I totally changed up the podcast schedule to get this in and address it because I suddenly witnessed what was happening all at once. And it's interesting because during this, pandemic, there's been different waves of things going on. And the first wave really was my business clients, those who are entrepreneurs, those who own their own practices, their own companies, and they were dealing with the worry and the fear of potentially what happens with my business. And then, of course, there was also and now we're working from home and the kids are at home and what does that look like? But I really wasn't hearing too much from my corporate women who, even if you were a partner in a service-based company, which means technically you're an owner, you still are very different than my entrepreneurs because you don't always have an owner mindset. Oftentimes it is an employee mindset, mostly because in many ways you actually tend to get compensated similar to an employee. You rely very much on, even if it's a draw, you rely on that same number. It doesn't change too much. You're very reliant on that job, that security, and that paycheck. And you get paid very well. So when the layoffs were coming, it was a lot of blue collar workers that were impacted. White collar workers not impacted too much because you could work from home. And the business didn't immediately dry up the same way that like a restaurant or a hair salon might. But now the wave has come and I am seeing it. So I've had a few friends reach out and tell me that their work is drying up or their business line is drying up and they are really worried that they are about to get axed. Now, keep in mind, these are very successful women. They didn't just start their careers. In fact, I'm trying to think, I would say they've all been out at least 10 years, probably more than 15 years. And they are well established in their companies and their firms. They are considered in many ways to be leaders, supervisors, bosses, and they are the ones who are concerned. Now, we've continued to be leading programs for our firms. And so one of the questions, since we've moved everything virtual, most of our stuff was virtual to begin with, but we've moved even the in-person components virtually. And I've been asking the question of every single group, two questions. One is, how have you been, on a scale of 1 to 10, how have you been able to focus on your work? And what's your stress level? Like, what's your worry level? And everyone across the board seems to they're having a harder time focusing and their stress is up. That has been going on from day one of COVID. In my experience, the people that I'm working with, the companies, the groups that I'm working with. And the interesting thing is it surprised me how many people who were in corporate and still working had that fear because I was like, well, what is there for you to worry about? But now I'm seeing it. So there have already been some like low level layoffs. I've heard that from a few different friends. They have confirmed that. I have now also heard from a few that there have been pay cuts instituted. And I was having another chat with a group of women, and they were also saying, especially with law firms, especially with big law, because like no one is unique or innovative, they all just follow each other's lead. They basically were like, as soon as one gets started, like everyone is going to follow. So this is the fear. And there is a concern that the job might go away. So I then posted on Facebook and just said, hey, I'm hearing rumblings of this. And the number of women who have said this to me in the last week has skyrocketed. And I'm curious as to what is going on. What's causing this? Why is this suddenly coming up? Like, why wasn't it coming up before? And I was like, talk to me, send me DMs. I promise not to use your name or, go into any details. And it was really, really interesting. So many of you reached out, and here's what I'm hearing. There is often a lack of transparency, especially in law firms. Companies tend to do a better job, and that are non-law related. And I think it's because in the legal arena, we are already so used to keeping client confidences. And when you're working on a strategy, you kind of have to hide your cards. You don't want anyone to see it. And unfortunately, I think that permeates every aspect of the business, such that even when leaders try to be transparent, they're never truly transparent. And so even when law firms try to lead with transparency and trust, there is always distrust. And I'm just going to be honest, for good reason, because law firms just really have a hard time with being super open and honest, because they're always trying to be strategic and make sure they know what's going on in their own minds before they announce it. And again, I just think it's the nature of the way that law is practiced and the way law firms work. It's run by lawyers, not business people. And so that's just the mindset that they bring to the table. And of course, that doesn't mean that companies aren't immune, because you might be listening and say, well, I have that same problem. You very well might. But I have seemed to notice that in companies where they really tend to have CEOs that either have some type of marketing background or PR background, they actually understand how important transparency is, and they're a little bit more willing to be vulnerable. So even if there's a spin, they're still more willing to be transparent and honest. So initially, everyone goes, they're working from home, and, our companies, our firms are saying, everything's fine. We're just going to work from home. We want to make sure everyone's in a great spot. And then, eventually you start to see layoffs, and then eventually you start to see pay cuts. And then, and here's what I'm hearing, that you're not working on much, or you are seeing that an entire business line within your company is drying up. And you're not sure when it's going to pick back up. And because you are a smart business person, you know that there are consequences to that. You can't survive forever without making some kind of change or cut. And, again, it depends on, is it a publicly traded company, a privately held company, or are we talking about, service-based firms like law firms? Especially law firms, the equity partners aren't going to take that big of a hit. They're just not. So, and we know this, right? So it starts to make everyone question, okay, if something has to give, is it going to be me? Is it going to be me? And it's not just that. There's also this thought of, well, I was hoping to finally make partner this year, or finally make equity partner this year, or I was up for this big promotion this year. I was going to get this big bonus. I was finally going to maybe move up a tier or get a certain leadership position. And now it's well, all of that's on hold. I now don't know if any of that's going to happen. And there is a lot of fear around it, but there's also a lot of grief. And I've been actually talking about this on social media, but a few women said, that really did feel like the right word, because in many ways, especially for women, so much has been sacrificed to get where you are. And it's just this feeling of, and now it's all going away, or it's going to go backwards. And everything I had been working for, now what? For what? And so it's interesting because you guys are now at the place where a lot of business people were at the very beginning. And so here's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about, one, is this a realistic fear? Let's talk through that. Two, regardless of whether it's realistic or not, how are we going to process it? And then three, what can you do about it? What can you do about it? Is there a way to position yourself so that you are in the best possible light when it comes to if cuts are made, so that you are saved? And then the last thing I want to talk about is how this is actually a great opportunity for you to get a reset on what it is you want and why, and whether or not you want to continue to be at the mercy of others. We'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so let's go in order. Is this a realistic fear? Maybe. Yeah, potentially. Here's the thing. None of us knows what's going to happen. Firms don't know what's going to happen. Companies don't know what's going to happen. The government doesn't know what's going to happen. Like, from what I can tell, no one knows what's going to happen, right? Like, this is brand new. We can look at what has been done before. We can look at prior recessions. We can look at, historical pandemics. We can look at all kinds of things. And yet we still don't know. This is a brand new situation. We cannot predict it. And that's part of what is just difficult for so many of us, especially, hard charging women, because most of us are control freaks and we don't have control. And we never did, but we had the idea that maybe we did. And right now we are faced, without question, that we don't have control. And that makes us very uncomfortable. We don't like it. And so because of that, we feel in some ways almost as if we are being attacked, right? So like, if I am no longer in control, then bad things are going to happen. And so as opposed to getting clear on what a potential solution would be or how to be part of it or like run into it, there tends to be the feeling that we should protect ourselves. And so we pull back. And here's the interesting thing. And I've been saying this the whole time, and I don't care whether you're in corporate or you're a business owner or you're just a human being. The pandemic is simply exaggerating and highlighting the problems that were already there. None of this is new. So the way that your fears are showing up now, they were showing up exactly the same way before. They're just magnified right now. Okay. So prior to this, here's what I would see. And I'm talking about mostly women because that's mostly who I work with. So, and I get some of this is going to be stereotypical and there are going to be exceptions to every rule, but I'm just going to go with most of the women that I work with. So most of the women that I work with, when they are in a firm or a company and they are not seeing the progress that they want, or they are concerned that they are going to lose their job because they are not performing, or they're worried, they're going to be asked to leave, they tend to exit out on their own. I don't know how many women, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, I don't know how many women will go. So let's use law firms as an example. They're not happy in their law firm. They're concerned that someone might even ask them to leave. And as opposed to going to the firm and saying, here's what I need, let's come up with a plan. What they do instead is they're like, I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to go get an in-house job. And I will often say like, well, why don't you tell the firm, like, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm feeling, this is what I need, this is what I want. Can we come up with a solution? And they're like, they won't do that. Okay, well, maybe they will, maybe they won't. And then they'll give me all the reasons why they know for a matter, like, I know that this is what's going to happen because this is what happened to so-and-so. Okay, fine. Every situation's different. You have no idea the actual conversation that was had, even if the parties tell you the conversation that was had, right? Because we are humans. We see things from a different lens. So even if someone actually was there and part of the conversation, you still don't know everything that was going on. And they're just like, I just know. So I'm not even going to ask. And that makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me because it's like, why would you do that? And someone actually told me recently, they said, well, it's really the concept of I would rather walk away and reject them before they can reject me. And I was like, wow, that's powerful stuff, right? So in many ways, that fear hasn't changed. It's just showing up differently now. So if you're feeling this, well, they're going to cut me, they're going to ask me to leave. And you're already going into, okay, well, how are we going to make the budget work? And is there another job that I can get? Question yourself as to why you're not trying to actually figure out how to make it work with the firm and how to best position yourself to be saved within the firm. Dig deep into that, because the best way to approach this in the past, now, and in the future is to run into that storm head on. Don't take cover. Don't retreat. just power through. And here's the thing. Here's what I want you to hear. You are bold, brave women. You are brilliant. I know you. I see you. And, there is something about the male-dominated corporate world that over time makes you question your worth and your value and what you can bring to the table. And I want you to hear loud and clear, you are just as smart and capable and valuable as all of those men who are passing you by and who are calling the shots. They may have in some way made you feel as though you're not as good because you don't have the same numbers, because you don't have the same power. But that is a lie. That is a lie. And I want you to be able to create enough space, if you can, to see that lie. And don't retreat from it. Don't hide from it. Don't fall into the trap of creating a situation where you are a victim of your own circumstances. Okay, as soon as you say, this is what's going to happen, and I'm going to create my plan to save myself or to not have to feel the failure or the rejection as much, you are letting them win. Do not let them win. You deserve more. So even if we don't know what's going to happen, even if, there might be cuts and that may be rational, let's move to step 2, which is how to process it such that we can then actually do something about it. So one thing you need to process is space. And for many of you, you don't have much space right now. There are so many articles out there right now about how moms are taking the brunt of this. You are no longer just trying to climb the corporate ladder. You are also now taking care of your kids in a way that you didn't have to before. You are the school teacher. You are the nanny. You are the daycare provider. You are now having to deal with meals, like additional meals that you wouldn't be dealing with otherwise. You've got housework. Your house cleaner may not be coming over now. And, again, a lot of successful men in corporate, in law, and medicine, they have wives who stay at home. And if they are now in the situation where they are working from home and they have a wife who is already working from home, they don't really have to do much else. She's still doing it all. There are not a lot of women who are in law and in corporate who have husbands who are already staying at home who can take care of the children. Most women have husbands who are also working. So now you've got 2 people in the house trying to climb the corporate ladder and take care of the kids, and it is a shit show. I'm hearing that from all of you, the men and the women, and where you have the 2 people that have really demanding jobs and you're trying to work from home. And it looks like for the most part that what people are trying to do is to have shifts. But even with the shifts, you're not available to work as much as you would otherwise. And so let's be honest, you are at a disadvantage if you are now competing with someone who does not have to deal with any of the home care stuff. Now, if you are a single parent, you can just pile on to what you're dealing with. Okay. So how do you create space when you are having to do all the things and you're trying to do your own job? And now it's okay. And now, Heather, you need me to create space to process my fear. I mean, you might be saying, well, F you, right? Well, again, this is the exact same situation as before. It is just magnified. You already had more burdens. You already were doing more than your counterparts who had someone basically at home that was already taking care of all of that stuff. This was already your situation. It is just magnified. And what that means is 2 things. One is the way that you could potentially be harmed, that is magnified. And your overwhelm and inability to find space is magnified. You were already, my guess is, overwhelmed and trying to figure out how to fit everything in and maybe a little burnt out before. And you were already disadvantaged because of everything that you had on your plate. And again, this is going to be stereotypical, but it's also anecdotal because it's exactly the women I work with and how they show up. We tend to be more nurturing. We are looking at people as a whole. When we are dealing with our teams, we want to make sure that, everyone has what they need, that they're happy, we're supporting them. We tend to get more admin functions because we don't say no and we do it well. We often put others first. We make others' priorities a higher priority than our own priority. That's not new. This has been here the entire time. But the pandemic is, again, making it even more clear as to how difficult it is for a woman to succeed in corporate at high levels at this time because of the competing issues and the inability to show up the same way that the men can when they have this taken care of for them. In the same way, prior to the pandemic, I was preaching that you had to create space even if you didn't have time for it, that you had to create space. You needed space more than anyone if indeed you did not have time for it. That is still true today. That is still true today. And I get that your issues are magnified, and that is why the space that you need, that also needs to be magnified if you are going to move through this with clarity and power. I want you to maintain your power. What I don't want you to do is feel as though you are disempowered, you are disadvantaged, and there is nothing you can do about it, because you can. You can, but you need the space to have the perspective and to be able to come up with a good offensive game plan. Whether it is taking a walk every single day by yourself, whether it is locking your bathroom door and taking a 5-hour bubble bath. Whatever you have to do to find that space. I'm a huge proponent of mindfulness and meditation. That is a great way to actually clear all of that clutter that's in your head. It might be doing something creative like painting or drawing. It might be yoga. And again, I can already hear you saying, I don't have time for that. And it's why you have to do it. It's why you have to do it. Because when you get so wound up and you have no space and you are so close to your stories, they will spin out of control. And here's what happens. You will see more of what you focus on. And once you have bought into that story, hook, line, and sinker, you will prove to yourself that that is what's going to happen. And so you have to give yourself the space to see that you actually have the ability to create a new story. You can talk to people and get creative solutions. In all of my different groups, everyone's doing it different, right? There is no right or wrong, but asking what is working for others is a great way to do it. Don't commiserate, don't complain, don't say, and I get it, right? It doesn't mean that you should not be frustrated with your situation, but if you're frustrated, the solution, the processing is finding creative ways to handle it, as opposed to just finding others who can, sit in the discomfort with you and everyone feel better about their really bad situation, right? Because it doesn't actually help you feel better. If you're talking to people all the time who are constantly complaining, maybe don't talk to them as much, and ask for the solutions. What is working? And then test, play, but find that space. And then I want you to take action. Take action. Okay. So this is actually similar to the previous podcast episodes that I did on, I think we did the path to partnership. We did the career stages. I think we had 3 different career stages. So it'd be the stage 2 and stage 3. We had compensation, and we'll put all of the links to these in the show notes because you might want to go back and listen to them. Again, same issues were just magnified now. So your strategy is actually going to be the same. And that is this. You are going to be your own advocate. You are going to recognize your value, and you are not going to let someone else's opinion of you change your strategy or who you are. Okay. So number 1, we are not going to just assume that people are going to take care of us. We are not going to just assume that if we are doing the work, if we are a good worker, that we will be taken care of. That will never get you to the top. It will often lead to resentment and bitterness. And that was prior, and it is definitely now. Okay. So I want you to take matters into your own hands. and I want you to advocate for yourself. So what does that mean? Well, same as before. If there are important positions in your company or your firm, if there are important committees in your company or your firm, go ask for that position. Look around, hear what people are talking about. And if you see a need, if you see an opening, if you see, any kind of vacuum, I want you to go to someone in charge and say, here's what I'm noticing. And I am particularly situated to help. And I would like permission to run with this. I would like permission to lead this. Okay. You want to be a leader. Leaders are less likely to get axed. And by the way, leaders are also going to make more money and be promoted. So again, this isn't just about preserving your job in the pandemic. As soon as we get out of this, you need to be doing it as well to get promoted. You should have been doing it before the pandemic to get ahead. Now, I'm not saying that to beat you over the head to say if you weren't doing it, you were doing it wrong. I'm just letting you know it's time to stop waiting for the men to actually do the right thing, because they're not going to. They have proven that to us over and over again. We have to take control over our own destiny. Okay. So one is to be seen as a fixer, a leader, someone who is valuable. Now, with that said, I want you to really be strategic in where you're offering to help, because if it is something that is important, but that your company or firm doesn't truly value, then this is the same concept of you're sitting on committees that are considered fluff by the leaders, even if they claim on the homepage of your website that it's something they care about. You know what they truly care about and don't care about, right? So what matters most in their minds right now? Well, it's basically money, right? And how they look in front of their clients and their consumers. It kind of depends on your company, but that really is the issue. And so, how coming up with solutions on how to help people with productivity. Now, look, that I care about wellness and mindset more than anyone, but oftentimes that is truly considered fluff. It doesn't mean it is fluff, but it is considered fluff. So make sure that you are showing up and serving in a way that they see as valuable. Okay. So if you're showing up and offering to lead meditation classes or yoga classes, amen, that is needed. And I can assure you that your company and your firm probably doesn't really think it's that important. And so that's not going to help you save your job. I want you to be strategic in what are the committees that matter and where are the opportunities in your company right now that matter. So where do you see opportunities where you guys could be doing angles or something related to growing the business or using the time to get really creative in thinking about pivoting? Lead those charges. That's where you want to raise your hand and say, I think this could be done and I would like to take lead. Can I get permission to do that? So that's number one. Number two is to get clear on the value you bring. And that this is what, the compensation and promotion negotiations are all about. Companies and firms don't care that you're working hard. They don't care that you're improving because that's about you. They care about themselves. So how are you bringing value to the firm? How are you bringing value to your company? That's what you have to show them. And let me just tell you this, you are bringing value. So if you sit down to do this work and you're like, I'm not bringing value. Okay, well, that's a problem and it's not a problem because you're not bringing value. It's a problem because you're not seeing the value that you're bringing. I want you to imagine that you're a man for a second and you think that you're God's gift to everyone and advocate for yourself, right? What are all the amazing things that you're doing that brings value and impacts the bottom line, right? You need to be able to bullet point that. Go back and listen to that compensation episode because you need to have your talking points as to how amazing you are and how the firm or the company is going to hurt if you are not in that position or in that role, right? You need those talking points. Now, and this is going to be super uncomfortable for you guys. But, I've been interviewed a lot on this and people often ask, when's the right time to actually go do this? And I always say, if there is a structure in place, you need to follow that because companies, firms, they like you to follow procedure. If there is not a procedure, then you must just advocate for yourself. And, if you go back and listen to my Path to Partnership episode, I talk about how it is an equity too. It's a political process. Don't kid yourself. It is absolutely political. And you need to be politicking every step of the way. And you need to be doing that now. So it doesn't mean that you are, asking for a meeting with your CEO to be like, let me tell you all the ways in which I bring value to the company. But what you better be doing is making sure that you have actually been having conversations with the people who matter. If while you have been, remote, if you've not been talking to the executives that you previously would have been talking to, or maybe you weren't even doing that before, well, that's a huge red flag that it's time to, whether it's now or in the future, make sure that you correct the things that you weren't doing in the past, which is you have to be networking and having conversations and be seen and known to the people in power. So if you've not done that in a while because you don't want to bother them or whatever else, now is the time. I want you to be reaching out. And it could just be saying something as simple as, I'm sure you have so much going on, and I just wanted to let you know that I've been thinking about you. And, I appreciate the pressure that you're under, and I'm sure it's not easy. And I just wanted to let you know that. That alone is powerful. Again, if you are not talking to, if you're in a firm, if you're not talking to your PGL, if you are not bringing ideas or solutions to the table, and I'm not meaning I need to talk about my position, or we're all worried and I need you to be more transparent. No. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, I want you to be really proactive in thinking about, okay, where do I bring value, and how can I go to someone who, by the way, they are stressed out because they don't know what to do. They're doing the best they can as well. They're also worried. If you've got the space to be able to be in a great place to go forward and say, here are my strengths, and here's where I bring value to the table. It's where I've always brought value to the table, and I'm seeing these opportunities. I'm curious, have you thought about this, or is anyone considering this angle, or is there anything you need help with? Here are my 3 greatest strengths. Is there anything on your plate right now? Because I know you too are struggling. You've got kids at home. You are dealing, with all of us, and you're also still trying to keep your business afloat. Is there anything I can do to help you? Here are my 3 strengths. And if I can step in and do anything for you at this time, let me know. That is strategic. This is how you get in front of people. But here's the thing. You can't really reach out and do those things if you don't already have mapped out where your value is. And then the last piece to this is you need to be developing business. 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 You should have been doing it before. And here's the deal. And I know I've said this before on the podcast. When you are bringing in clients, you really can do no wrong. And we know this because there are men who do terrible things that are allowed to stay because they make money. And if you are bringing in clients, that is going to give you influence. It is going to give you power, and it's going to allow you to get to the top such that we can start to change the culture and the dynamics and the decisions that are being made. That's how we have meaningful and effective change. We're not waiting for people to give it to us. We just take it for ourselves. So here's what I've been noticing. And again, this was happening before the pandemic, and it's even magnified now. When women should be doubling down on figuring out, do I have the right offer? Do I have the right messaging? Do I have the right marketing? Do I have the right sales? They're not doing it. They're not doing it. But can I tell you something? The men are. The men are. So we're actually running ads right now related to one of our business development offerings. And that one is open to men. A lot of my things are only open to women. And by the way, when I run ads, it's all like the women crush it. They're the only ones interested in my stuff. We still do it to men because if a man likes my stuff, they're actually generally a good fit for our culture and what we believe in. And they are perfect in our groups. We've never had a man in one of our groups that's a problem because they're just not going to opt in if they're a you-know-what. So, but normally my ads crush it with women. So we're running ads right now related to how do you focus on business development in the right way at this time? And the women, they're not even clicking. The men, they're all over it. And look, I get it. You've got a lot on your plate, but this is how they get ahead and you don't. And I'm not blaming it on you, right? Like the situation is effed up. The fact that you're having to do more is effed up, but it doesn't change the fact that the men don't care. And so if you want to get ahead, you got to play the game. And it's interesting to me that women aren't investing in business development right now or doing those things. And even in my 2020 Experience Mastermind, I have a lot of women who feel like it's inappropriate to market and sell right now. And again, that is just a magnification of what was going on prior, which was, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to bother people. I don't want to be seen in that light. And that's where you got to have the shift. You don't have to actually be pushy or pressure people, but gaining that self-confidence and knowing that you have something valuable to offer and changing your mindset and your perspective and learning that you actually can market and sell with the best of them. Once you learn what that looks like for you, it can change everything. So even if you don't actually have to bring in clients, you're always selling, you are always marketing, you're marketing and selling your own business line. So if you're in a company, whatever you guys are offering, you need to be able to market and sell it just as good as the salespeople in your firm, in your company. And because that's how you go to bat for them and you truly understand their needs. So I have been preaching this forever, but I'm going to keep preaching it. If you want to not be worried about being axed, or if you want to move up that ladder, if you want to make more money, if you want to have more freedom and autonomy, I don't care whether you are a business owner or not, you have to focus and you have to get outside of your comfort zone and getting more comfortable with marketing and sales. If you're not focusing on business development, that is a mistake. Okay, and I know we're going long. This one is longer than usual, but like I said, I am fired up about this. So here's the last thing. If you're like, but this is all BS, right? I am just mad that I'm even in this position and I have to do it this way. Why do I have to be in this male-dominated world where I'm even having to look at things this way? Then maybe this will be the time. Maybe this will be the time when collectively we say, you know what, this is BS. Enough is enough. I am tired of trying to prove my worth to you. I am tired of playing your games. I am tired of doing all the things, pleasing all the people, trying to be Superwoman. And what do I actually want? What do I want? If I was in charge, how would I approach it? And then do it. Be the CEO of your life and your career. And I personally think that this is the best opportunity for women to smash through those glass ceilings or say, you know what, I'm just going to actually walk out this door over here. Forget the glass ceiling. Turns out I don't actually have to move up. I can just move sideways. And when I say move sideways, I mean walk into what you want. What do you want? How would you lead? And then go do it. Go create what you actually want. I think that there has never been a better time than to have a collective revolution and say, you know what? We are damn good leaders. We are damn good experts and service providers. And we're done. Enough is enough. And I'm not saying quit. I'm saying take back your power and start leading from a place of owning your worth and knowing your value. And if you get cut, I want you to know this. It has nothing to do with you as a person. It has nothing to do with your value. It has nothing to do with your worth. It has nothing to do with your future potential. It has nothing to do with the way that you view yourself. That is completely up to you. So if that happens, don't pull back. I want you to just brush it off. And I want you to say, what do I want? And I want you to run towards it with all of your heart and all of your might, because you deserve the life and career that you want, and you have the power within you to make that happen. So I hope you feel this as a rallying call. Go take action. Go do something about it. Get fired up about the life and the career that you want. Don't be apologetic about it. I mean, I think in many ways we feel as though, well, I have a good career, I make good money, and there are so many people hurting. Who am I to say that this is what I want and to go after it? You owe it to yourself, because when you are in power, you're the one who's actually going to make a difference for the people who can't do much about it right now. That is where you make a difference. That is how you have an impact. If you need more help with all of these concepts, go grab a copy of our blueprint. It's heatherjoyhubbard.com/blueprint. It is still the life and law blueprint. So for the lawyers listening, you'll totally relate to all of it. If you're not a lawyer, you'll still get it. We are actually redoing that right now because we developed this in 2015, but those foundations they're still true today. Like I said, everything's just magnified. So we're going to actually do almost like a pandemic version. So if you sign up for that, as soon as we get that modified version finished, we'll send that to you as well. And I think we're going to work on some worksheets and stuff to support that. So you have got this. Don't pull back. Don't pull back. This is the time to rally. We are needed. You are needed. Let's go do it. For show notes, downloads, and other free resources, and to keep the conversation going, head on over to hustleandflowpodcast.com. See you there.